Hey crafters, I'm Alex Vanover and welcome back to my craft room. In this video, I'm going to show you two different methods for applying vinyl to acrylic blanks. One is my personal favorite method, and you can only use it with 651 vinyl. But if you're interested in using patterned vinyl, I'm going to show you how to use patterned vinyl on acrylic blanks as well. If you guys have never worked with acrylic blanks before, they are so easy to use. You guys are going to love them. They are perfect for gifts for your kids or your friends. If you're a bride, they are perfect for your bridal party. They make great luggage tags, and you can even use them as gift tags. So there's tons of possibilities for these. And all you need to get started are some acrylic blanks, some acrylic blank hardware, vinyl, and transfer tape. The tassels and other dangles are optional. First, I'm going to show you in Design Space how to design designs for acrylic blanks, and then I'll show you how to apply them and add the hardware. Okay, let's get started. So to get started with acrylics, first we're going to go to 651vinyl.com and download the SVGs that go with the acrylics that I bought. Under the blanks menu, if you go to the acrylics page, you will find that the first product is the page where all of the downloads are. So I need to download the cupcake and the heart. And these are both SVGs, so they're already perfectly designed to fit your acrylic. So let's go back to Design Space, and I'm going to go into Upload. So we'll go into Browse, and under Downloads, we'll search for the Heart SVG. I always like to rename my stuff, so I'm going to call this the Heart Acrylic. In tags, I'll put Heart and Acrylic. I like to use tags so that you can find them later. Then we're also going to upload the cupcake. I'm just following the same process and naming it the same and tagging it the same. So we're going to insert both of these into our project. And the reason that I'm doing two different acrylics in this video is because I want to show you two different ways that you can do it. So we are going to use printed pattern vinyl with the cupcake acrylic, and with the heart, we're just going to use regular 651 vinyl. So first I'm going to turn this the color that my acrylic is actually going to be. It's going to be like a teal color. So we'll just grab a color like that. That's close enough. So now that I have my heart the right color, I'm going to go into my text and I'm going to write Love You Bunches. That's the text that I'm putting on my heart. I'm going to center it real quick. And then we're going to go in and change the font to something easy to cut. So I'm going to use one of my favorite part script, part regular fonts called Sunset Skies, because I think it's cute and it does a really good job of being thick enough for your machine to cut. So next, I need to decrease the line spacing. That's why this is so far apart. So let's try 0.5. That didn't do anything. So let's try -1. Almost. All right, so that's good enough and close together enough. So then I'm going to go to my line spacing, and I usually like to do about 0.5 line spacing depending on the font. So we'll put this in here and size it appropriately. Maybe we'll tilt it a little, give it some style. Whoops. And it allows us to cut a little bit bigger if we do it like that as well. So I'm going to turn this one to light purple because that's the color that I'm going to cut it. And usually I don't really worry about what color the text is going to be, but since I'm going to be cutting several layers, I do want to make sure that I cut it correctly, and so I'm going to make the layers the actual color they're going to be. And I'm also going to insert some text and put XOXO because I want to show you guys another, I want to show you guys a 3-layer design on this heart. Whoops. So we'll make this letter spacing 0.5 also, and we'll be able to put this at the bottom. I'm going to turn this one to a darker purple. So that's all we're going to do for the heart. We'll just put this aside for now and save our project. As you can see, I've already saved my project, and I called it Acrylic Blanks with Vinyl so that I can always come back and find it if I need to. So the difference is going to be between these two is we are actually going to mirror all of these cuts and put this vinyl, we're going to layer it one inside the other so that it's completely enclosed up against the acrylic, whereas with this one we are going to use printed pattern vinyl. So it's going to look a little bit different and we're not going to mirror it. So now that my cupcake is light gray, I'm actually going to insert a circle. So I'm going to uncheck the lock button so that I can change it and make it whatever proportion I want. So next I'm actually going to duplicate both my cupcake and my circle because we're going to have to do this process twice in order to get the pieces that we need. So the first thing we're going to do is drag the circle up, and we're going to be lining it up across here and here on the cupcake to slice it into 2 different pieces. And then for this piece, we're actually going to go into contour, and we are going to contour out that top part. So now we just have this bottom piece, and I'm actually going to get rid of this part, and I thought of an easier way to do it, guys. So then I'm going to take this cupcake up top, I'm going to change the color of this bottom piece, and we're just going to slice this other part into the cupcake so that it matches perfectly. So now that we have the bottom, we're trying to create a top that's independent of the bottom. So if I line these two up exactly, then I can slice them just like I did with the circle and create a top part that fits perfectly. So we'll select them both and we'll click slice. And now we have a separate top and bottom. See? So it'll fit perfectly. So this is actually going to be a printed pattern vinyl, and I can't insert that as a pattern fill. So I'll just make that one pink, and I'll leave the bottom mint because that's what color it's going to be. I'm actually going to insert my monogram onto this cupcake so that I can show you guys how to layer this design. And usually I have to filter it to my images because Cricut is always going to bring up its own images. And I am not a Cricut Access member. So we're just going to do my basic circle monogram. And this one has an outset, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that so that you're left with just a monogram. This would be way easier, you guys, if I selected it and I use my XY coordinates to bring it to 0, 0. There we go. All right, so we'll resize it to fit on our cupcake. That's a little bit small. We want to make it a little bigger. And there, I think that will fit perfectly. I'm going to change it to white because that's the color I want it. And that's all that we're going to do for the acrylics. So we're going to go ahead and save it. And now we're going to go to make it, and I'll show you guys how I'm going to do this so that I make sure I cut my vinyl correctly. So these first 3 mats are pieces that are going to be on the front of the acrylic, so we're not going to mirror them, but for anything that's on the heart acrylic, we're going to click mirror. I'll show you guys why that is after we cut it. You guys have seen vinyl cut a million times, so I'm not going to make you sit here for that. But next, I'll show you how to layer all this on top of your acrylic. All right, so first I'll show you what to do with the heart. Every acrylic comes with some sort of coating over top of it. This one happens to be blue. Sometimes it's brown paper, sometimes it's clear, but it's just to keep the acrylic from scratching in shipping. So first I'm going to use my pin pen and just very carefully lift the little sheet off and pull the rest with my finger. So once the acrylic paper, or once the backing paper stuff is removed, it's just a plain clear plastic acrylic. So the method that I'm going to show you with this heart is a method that makes your vinyl a lot more durable, and you don't have to worry about the vinyl flaking off and stuff like that, which really doesn't happen much anyway because 651 really is really strong. But I like this method, but you can only use it with regular 651, like Oracal 651 vinyl. If you use any kind of glitter vinyl or pattern vinyl, this method isn't going to work because Oracal 651 is the same color on both sides, including the adhesive side, and that's why this method works. So the first thing we're going to do is weed some of our layers. I'll just use my pin pen and get my middle layers out of there. And that's another benefit of using a little bit thicker font, is that you don't have to spend a bunch of time weeding because it's not very intricate. So I know it's backwards because it's mirrored, but this says Love You Bunches. And here's our XOXO. And this is the last piece that we're going to put on. Here's our outline of our heart. So now that all of our pieces are weeded, we can start applying transfer tape and applying them to our acrylic. So I'm using the clear medium tack transfer tape from 651 vinyl. So I'm just going to lay all my layers down on it. That's the easiest way that I found to use this transfer tape. So first I'll cut it apart. Then we'll use our squeegee and we'll burnish everything down so that it gets really good contact on the transfer tape. Especially these little fine letters definitely need to be well stuck down. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is use the Love You Bunches. That's the first layer that I'm going to put on. So I'm going to remove the backing of the vinyl. And the really cool thing about using clear acrylics, because there actually are like white and other colored acrylics. But the really cool thing about using clear ones is when your design is mirrored, you can literally drop the heart right on top of it so that it gets in just the right place. Instead of trying to place it perfectly, I can kind of move the acrylic to where I want it to go. So let's see, I want my keychain to hang like this. So I'm going to spend some time just getting it where I want it. I think I had it slanted a little bit more like that. Nope. Had it like this. So once you're happy with it, you can drop the acrylic right down on your vinyl. Then you want to flip it over and use your squeegee to burnish it on some more. And if you don't know what burnish means, it's just a fancy word for rub with your squeegee. Then we can peel off our transfer tape. And make sure that you're careful as you peel this. If some of this starts to come up, just push the transfer tape back down, burnish it a little more, and then it should be good. Here's our first layer with our vinyl. So next we're going to add our XOXO, and I actually ended up with more space up in the top of the heart, so I think I may put it up there. So again, I'm just laying the transfer tape in the vinyl so that it's sticky side up of the transfer tape. And then once I get it where I want it, I'm just going to drop my acrylic right on top. And then I'll flip it over and burnish with my squeegee. All right, guys, so I'm just going to be honest. I didn't show you this part, but I ended up having to recut this heart because when I peeled the backing off the transfer tape and flipped it over, the hole was on the wrong side. So save yourself some vinyl, don't be like me, and make sure before you start laying down your other layers that you figure out which side the outline and like the background needs to go on before you start adding your layers. But if you have to recut a heart like I did, no big deal. So our last step is peel the heart off the backing. And usually when I try to line these up, the first place that I try to line it up is the hole of the keychain where the hardware is going to go through, because that's one of the easiest to see. So I'm going to kind of hold the vinyl down with one of my hands because vinyl does get a little bit staticky, so it's going to want to cling to your acrylic. So you want to hover it over it, but not too close. I'm going to try to line it up with the hardware hole, and then I'll try to line up the rest of the outside. But this part can definitely be a little tricky, so take your time, go slow. Then I'm going to line it up with the top portion of the heart. And that should line it up pretty good with the rest of the shape. So next we're going to burnish it like we always do. All right, so here's our final product. So there are pros and cons to every method of pretty much anything in crafting. So let's talk about the pros and cons of this method right here. I like this because it works with Oracal 651, and that makes it really, really easy, and most people are working with 651 when they're doing acrylics. So I really like this method for that reason. I also like it because the front side of my keychain is completely flat and you can't feel anything. So sometimes people are worried about these smaller letters coming off. In all honesty, if you let 651 vinyl cure for like 24 to 48 hours before you really start beating it up and throwing it in your purse and stuff, it's really probably going to stick fine. But I have a lot of peace of mind knowing that you're not going to feel any vinyl at all. So the only exposed vinyl is this background. But there are also some cons to this method, and one of them is that you can see, I'll try to show you guys on the camera, you can see the bumps of the other vinyl through the background. So that may bother some people. And another con of this method is that you do get more bubbles on the inside, and sometimes those are harder to get rid of. So if you're not, if you haven't been applying vinyl very long, if you're newer to crafting, you may want to keep that in mind and do some practice before you make any of these for gifts or anything like that. But otherwise, I really like this method. I think it's really easy and really simple. And basically, the only thing that you do differently with this method than any other acrylic is you just mirror the vinyl when you cut it. So now let's talk about how to work with printed pattern vinyl on acrylics. Printed pattern vinyl is just a little bit different than working with Oracal 651 because there's nothing on the back side of printed pattern. So the side where the adhesive is just plain white. So that's why we can't lay our acrylic on top of our vinyl and mirror everything like we did before. So we're going to layer all of our layers on top of our acrylic just like we would with any other vinyl project. I'm going to start with placing the top of my cupcake because I think it's going to be the trickiest. So that's where I want to start. So I am also, just like before, I'm going to lay my acrylic on the table, and I'm going to start by lining up the top portion where the hardware goes, because that's the trickiest part to get right. And then if you line that up correctly, most of the rest of the vinyl should just already be in place. So once you drop it on there, burnish it really well. You might even take your squeegee to it, burnish it. Then peel off your transfer tape. Next, I'm going to place the bottom portion of my cupcake the exact same way as I placed the top. And if I can, I'm going to let them overlap a little bit so that there's no clear gap in acrylic. So I push it down with my fingers first, and then I go over it with my squeegee. So we're looking pretty good so far. Next, I'm going to place my monogram over top the icing part. I'm just going to center it the best I can, but I'm not too worried about being perfect here. And there you have it. Working with printed pattern vinyl on an acrylic is just that simple. So the pros for this method of placing vinyl are that they're really easy to use and it's really simple. But the cons are that sometimes the back doesn't look exactly like the front. But this one could be fun because maybe you could do another design on the plain white on the back. Maybe add some sprinkles or something fun like that. So there's lots of great ways to be creative with acrylics. It's a lot of fun. It takes a little bit of practice, but you're probably never going to be perfect, and that is totally okay because that's what makes it so fun. So next, I'll show you quickly how to add some hardware onto your acrylic. So you have lots of different hardware options depending on where you buy your acrylics from. If you buy yours from 651 Vinyl, I believe there are 3 options at the moment. There are a set of 10 regular like traditional top keychains. There are the lobster claw keychains, and there are also ball chain options for hardware. So I'm going to show you guys how to use the traditional hardware and the lobster claw hardware. And we're going to add some fun little tassels. I love to add tassels and dangles from my acrylics because I think it just makes them so fun and so cute. So 651 Vinyl has these fun tassels. There's lots of great places to get dangles. At the moment, when I'm recording this video, there are not any dangles at 651 Vinyl, but that's not to say that it won't change because 651 Vinyl is always adding fun new things to their site. So the nice thing about 651 Vinyl's hardware is that it already comes with a jump ring on the bottom. If you don't have a jump ring, that's where we're actually going to attach our keychain. But some hardware will come with it. Some hardware you may have to purchase that separately. So I'm going to be using a pair of jewelry pliers and a ring tool. A ring tool is what I'm going to put over my finger and prevents me from needing a second pair of jewelry pliers. But if you don't have a ring tool, you may have to purchase a second pair so that you can get the jump rings open, unless you just want to use your nails. So I'm going to start by taking one side of the jump ring with the jewelry pliers, and the second side of the jump ring is going to be inserted in the ring tool. Then I'm going to move them in opposite directions to create a gap. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but my jump ring is separated in this direction. So next I'm going to add my keychain. May have to open that a little bit wider. Some acrylics are easier to put on there than others. So I widened my gap a little bit, and I'm going to add my acrylic. Before I add the tassel, I'm going to use the ring tool to close my jump ring back. I'm going to add the tassel on a second jump ring. So all I did was bring the 2 sides of the jump ring back together, and I'm going to take my jewelry pliers and kind of squeeze them together to make sure it's a really tight fit. So there are lots of different ways to add your tassels and other dangles, and one of the ways to do that is to add a second jump ring. You can also put the tassel right on the jump ring with the acrylic, but as you can see, the jump ring is sort of out of room with this particular acrylic. So I think it's going to look better if I add a second jump ring with this tassel. So this is a thinner gauge wire of jump ring, so I'm just going to hold one side with my fingers and use the jewelry pliers to pry open the other side. Then I'll add my tassel onto it. And then I'm going to figure out the best place to put the jump ring on this acrylic. Sometimes it's best to just attach to the already existing jump ring, and I think that's probably what's going to look best so that it dangles right in front of the words. So now I'll use my jewelry pliers to close it back. And here's how our first keychain turned out. And since you guys already saw me add hardware to the first keychain, I'll add hardware to this one and show you the final result. Look how cute these keychains turned out. Vinyl is just the beginning of the possibilities with acrylic blanks. If you're interested in adding glitter to your acrylics, stay tuned for my next video where I'll show you how to do that as well. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments for me. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing to Divine Design Crafts for lots of other project ideas and inspiration, because I put out new videos every week. I'm Alex Vanover, and let's craft again soon.